Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. My name is Anshu Mehrotra, and on behalf of IACS, I am excited to invite everyone to the opening day of the Leadership Conference hosted by the Indo-American Community Services. This conference is spread over 3 Friday afternoons starting today. So you will have a chance to visit with one of our leaders, or a few of our leaders, I should say, every week over the next 3 weeks. IACS's mission is to increase the diversity at workplaces and provide a leadership networking platform. And in regards to that, we host annual leadership conferences, entrepreneur conferences, women's leadership events, virtual career expos, and a couple of my favorite programs, which are the Young Leaders programs and the student internship and mentoring programs to foster leadership and in the talent pipeline coming in and joining our ranks. The theme for the conference this time round is the new normal. And the opening keynote is on resilience as the new normal. One logistical topic, as we go through the next hour or so, please feel free to send your questions via the chat, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. So with that said, I am extremely excited to introduce Sundaram Nagarajan, President and Chief Executive Officer of Nordson Corporation. At Nordson, he focuses on creating value for customers through innovation and industry-leading excellence in quality and delivery. Prior to joining Nordson, Naga has had a 23-year career with Illinois Toolworks, a Fortune 200 company, where he had held numerous roles of increasing responsibility. More recently, he was the Executive Vice President for the ITW Automotive OEM segment. Under his leadership, the Automotive OEM segment consistently delivered profitable revenue growth through both organic and acquisitive means. Naga also serves on the board of directors for Sonoco Products Company, is a member of the advisory board of IACS, which we are very fortunate to have had that benefit of guidance and mentorship for many years, the Executive Club, Economics Club of Chicago, and is a past trustee of Hobart Institute of Welding Technology, former trustee of the AWS Foundation, and the co-chair of ITW's National United Way campaign. Naga has earned a BS in Mechanical Engineering from South Gujarat University in India, and an MBA from Wright State University, and a PhD in Material Science from Auburn University. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Naga to this forum. Would you like to say a few words, Naga?
Yeah, thank you, Anshu, and it is good to be with all of you. Certainly a new way of communicating with all of us. We're looking forward to talking about resilience. And before we get started, I wanted to give you a commercial on Nordson. So Srinivas, if you could play that for us, that'd be great.
Dispensing, fluid management, testing and inspection, and surface treatment. This is what we do. But here's where you'll find us. You may not know us, but we're with you every day, everywhere. Nordson, Precision Technology Solutions. For over 60 years, our expertise has been instrumental in creating the products people use every day. How? Our cutting-edge technologies enable the manufacturing processes for countless products. We seal millions of packages and cartons every day. We make life-saving medical procedures possible. We make baby diapers and other hygienic products. We assemble, test, and inspect today's most modern electronics. We process plastics to enable modern living. We paint your furniture, appliances, and everything in between. We even help assemble the cars you drive and the planes you fly. The end markets are just about endless, because our job is to help our customers succeed. With that goal in mind, we encourage our employees to be innovators. And with locations in over 40 countries, we aim to share our success by giving back to the communities where we operate. Our relentless focus on helping customers, combined with our technology, brings value to people every day, everywhere. On the job, in the home, behind the wheel, at the market, at the doctor, in the community. Nordson is there. This is what we do.
So, given Naga, the diversity of the portfolio of an organization like Nordson and the diversity of your background, some of which I was able to highlight in my introduction, for our audience, can you share some of the elements of your background that have shaped you and your focus on resilience?
Yeah, like many of us, Indian and all other immigrants to the United States, our outlook and how we work and how we think about resilience is all shaped by our own experiences in our home country as well as the countries we come to. Many of us came here as students, and you can imagine for someone that grew up in India, it'll be pretty shocking to show up in US and find out you have to do everything on your own. So it's an interesting journey, and all of us learn very quickly. And then probably that is the biggest lesson of all resilience, is to be able to understand what has changed in your environment, learn new skills. In my case, it was to learn how to cook and then adapt. And then I would tell you, those were three things that kind of stays with us through all our experiences. Simple ones, difficult ones, and probably life-changing ones. So that's kind of how I would take away. Many of us went to school here and learned lots of new things, but still, how our view of the world, shaped by our own parents and where we grew up, stays with us, right?
That's
and
right.
so it's an, most immigrants or all immigrants would share that trait that Anshu, you and I have, that
Great. Thank you for that, Naga. As we all know, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and over the past year and a half, these have been unprecedented times for us and everybody around us. So in the current context of the world and the business environment, which you've had the privilege to have had two different environments over the past year and a half as well, and get exposed to those. Yeah. How do you think about resilience in these contexts?
Yeah, so let me take the example of Nordson mainly, because so if you thought about this COVID period, that's where we've spent most of the time. So I came to the company in August of 2019. Luckily, had 6 months to kind of get around and get to know the company, meet my new colleagues, and really came to appreciate what a strong company Nordson was. But quickly thereafter, we went into this unprecedented times. And I'll give you how we have thought about it. I personally have, and my leadership team has, and all our colleagues at Nordson have. We took it one quarter at a time. A very realistic, pragmatic way to think about the short term. But at the same time, I'm incredibly proud of our Nordson colleagues, because we did not give up on some of our long-term initiatives. So let me talk about both of them and give you a flavor. On the short term, like everybody around the country and world, number one focus was safety. Safety of our colleagues, safety of our customers, our suppliers, anybody and everybody we interacted with. So safety was number one. Number two, we were in a very unique circumstances because, as you saw some of the products that Nordson makes, we were an essential industry. So we had to stay open, we had to operate. And, quite frankly, it's the greatest example of resilience, because if you would have told me, for example, that overnight we could take 3,500 employees at Nordson virtual, we decided Friday evening, Monday morning, everybody was at home. If ever somebody came to me, let's say this was in March 10th, we did this. If somebody came to me and said, Naga, we want to go 100% virtual in the US. And I would say, well, great idea, but, let's do a pilot.
Yes. Yes.
And it would have been 2 years and maybe 10% of our employees may be virtual, right? But
Yeah.
here we didn't have a choice.
That's right.
Come Monday, everybody went home. And so that's a great example of how short-term we needed to pivot. And and all companies did that, right? So we were not unique, but I'll just share that as an example of how we have had to adapt. We kept a keen eye on the business. We had lots of good metrics around it. We were fortunate. Nordson is very fortunate because of the diversity of end markets we have. As we finished the year out, we were down 4% for the year, which is incredible, right? When compared to others. But we did make a choice. We made choices around very strong businesses. We didn't make any adjustments on costs. We just said, we're going to hold tight because we want to stay invested in innovation. There were some businesses where we needed to make changes. We should have made them a long time ago. But so we adjusted in few, but that was few is sort of what I would tell you. And a couple of other things, we really had to think about this issue on a very holistic way and on the fly, right? So we needed to say, what did we care about? We cared about our employees' safety. So, we instituted a COVID leave policy. Essentially give 2 weeks leave for any of our employees who simply had an issue related to COVID. They didn't have to, they didn't need to be sick, or they could stay home to take care of a family member or go to a doctor, whatever be the case. So we kind of instituted that. We still have that in play. We did, like every corporation, we made, donations, about $1 million we contributed to COVID relief efforts. We did have a working group of site leaders, HR and legal to really make sure that we were navigating, all the changes in the environment, learning, adjusting. It is, I'm sure all of us have experiences, but I cannot tell you how proud we should all be of all our colleagues, because they had so much coming at them. Everybody had to adjust, everybody had to learn new things and still keep business going.
That's right.
And to me, I'm incredibly proud, and I'm sure all of you would share the same experience that you have seen. On the long term, though, one of the things, there were like 3 things we did. We transformed an existing business system to put in a new growth framework. We decentralized the company. I hired a CFO and onboarded a CFO via Zoom. We hired a CIO and onboarded a CIO on Zoom. We refreshed our board, brought in 3 new directors, 2 of whom we hired via Zoom, and onboarded them via Zoom. And I have not met both these directors still in person yet. And I hope to meet them in August. So that's the kind of things we needed to do. We needed to do the short term, but at the same time, the Nordson team really decided that, we're not going to let this COVID take away from where we need to be. And I'm so glad we did that, because we are further ahead because of it.
Yep. No, that's great insight. So maybe we can poke at it just a little bit, because I heard on the short term, I heard adaptability, right? And the need to make decisions in a compressed amount of time.
Yeah.
Decisions that we may have maybe taken months or years, and taken a more careful is probably the wrong word, but more a measured approach to adopting, right? So adaptability as a key enabler and driving resilience. And then you touched upon this really important notion of making the choices, making strong choices and good choices and trade-offs. So maybe you can help our audience understand a little bit more around how you make those choices, right? What are some of those the value systems or what have you, right?
Yeah, and it's a great question, right? And it is circumstantial in many ways. But one thing I will tell you, what we did, and I do all the time, is try to get as much data as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Try to use little bit data, even if it is not directly related. Use data to help you make some decisions. So a good example is, the country is still going through COVID. One of the things we did, I would say, the first 2 months was a blur, right? Between March and April, we did what we needed to do. There was no, okay, there was no thoughtfulness or data. You just like, okay, shut that thing down. And, if you have to keep this running, keep running.
Right.
So what we later on began to do was collect, like all companies, organizations, we collected infection rates within our own organization.
Mm-hmm.
We collected exposure data. And then we used that data to compare against the community in which we were in. So we have 3 or 4 locations. So based on that, that kind of was an indicator for us to say, how are we doing versus the local community? Are we getting out of whack, or are we on track? Because eventually, Anshu, after 6-7 months, we really didn't even have to look at our data. We just looked at the community data. We just mirrored that. But it was important for us to do that, because if something we were not doing right, we wanted to use that data to help us. So that was one, using data. The second is we had a good team that had various perspectives. So for example, we have a working team of site leaders. So we have site leaders from around the world. So think about this pandemic. So we had early indicators from our teams in China and Asia. And then you follow the pandemic to Europe, and we still had not formed this global team. But what this team enabled us was we were adding people as we were going. First, we had a China team, then we had China and Europe team, and then we had a global team.
Yep.
But what that allowed us was our colleagues in China were able to inform their colleagues in US of practices, right? So using people, being flexible, enabling this team to make decisions was one of the key things, right? So we as an executive team, in the thick of things, we met every day.
Yeah.
Right? When things were really terrible, every day we had a standing meeting at lunchtime, right? 12 o'clock, everybody was on a call. But then we slowly backed off, right? As things got a little bit stabilized, or at least we understood where we're headed. But our site leader team met every week, no matter what. And so that was very helpful. And I think the third thing I would tell you is you cannot predict future. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there is anything we learned from this, is you cannot predict future. So which means you take what you got, you make decisions based on what you know. And if it worked, great, do more of it. If it didn't work, don't do it.
Adapt.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty much what we could do.
Yeah.
And I think, it's still here. We had to communicate. It is, I mean, you won't believe how many times all of us have had to do it, but that was really important for us too. So
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'll touch on 2 other things that I heard on your long-term focus or long-term approach. One was this notion of focus. Clearly, when there's a lot of dynamics and uncertainty, the privilege of focus really allows us as leaders to really highlight the most important things. And the next other thing that I heard you say is you took the advantage of the opportunity, right? Never waste a good crisis, I guess, is a phrase that I've heard in the past. So you took this opportunity to focus on transforming the business. So maybe talk a little bit about how you guys as a leadership team decided to take advantage and had the courage to actually drive some of that.
Yeah, some of this we were already working on, right? So going into the crisis, we had already determined what was the best opportunity for Nordson. The best opportunity for Nordson was growth. So we had a lot of these things started. We had a strategy in place, and we kicked off our strategy, our growth framework strategy, first week in March. And we even were contemplating to cancel it because we brought in people from overseas,
Right.
right? And right after that, we shut everything down. So we were this close. And so, the leadership team's decision really was, do we take a pause, right? We kick this off and we've got, pilot team starting to work. Do we hold back?
Mhm.
I think at that time, I'm glad we did that. Our approach was, no, this is important. Yes, we have this pandemic. We don't know when this will get over. We can't wait around. We're going to move forward. We'll do the best we can, and we'll adjust if we needed to, but we're going to move forward, right? So we are very resolute in our approach to say this is so important for the company that we cannot let a pandemic get in our way.
Yeah.
And so we needed to go. So we did that. And I would tell you, our teams were incredible, right? Incredible to adjust in this environment to say, you know what, we're not going to give up on this goal. We're going to keep moving forward. And I think we took the same approach to organization structure, right? We were going to go into division-led structure, and we were going to go to 2 operating segments instead of 3. We said, listen, we don't know when this thing is going to get over, but we got to go. And so we didn't do everything we wanted to do, but we did these 2 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we felt so passionately about the future of the company was dependent on these 2 things that we did not want to wait.
It's great. It's great. Now, this has been really, really helpful to get some pointers around your framework of resilience, right? And what does that mean? So just to summarize a few of the things that I heard, utilizing data for making decisions and informing decisions from the relevant pieces of data, maintaining a focus, a balance on the near term while keeping our eye as leaders on the long term and what the aspirational targets are. Adaptability is weaved very, very intrinsically to the notion of resilience, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty around and we need to be able to react quickly. And the last thing, as you just touched upon it, is the courage to take advantage of the opportunities that reside within crises like that.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would add to all of this as leaders, and even whether you lead a single small team or a large team or an organization, communication was key.
Yeah.
We needed to communicate. Because oftentimes, Anshu, we were, as all of us have experienced, clearly there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So we needed to accept the fact that the reality is there is uncertainty, but we as leaders had an obligation and an important responsibility to paint the picture of hope. And finding that right balance between being realistic and being hopeful was very important for us. So we look for simple things, we look for big things, but we always were upfront with teams to simply say, we know this, we're going to do this, and this is something we're trying to figure out. And so I think in every circumstance, finding that right balance is important because people can see through it, right?
That's right.
People can see through it. They're smart, and so
authenticity and clearly communication is a really important point. Yeah. And then creating this notion of hope. Great. Thank you, Naga. So can you share some experiences of organizational and leadership resilience at Nordson that you've seen outside of the what you just shared, and any other general advice that you would have for our audience?
Yeah. A couple of things as I kind of reflect back in all of this, and I would tell you, fully understanding, all of us go through personal challenges, and sometimes as we think about the future, trying to understand or I have a clear view of what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? What do you enjoy doing? Or whatever, however you want to describe that. But just having a clear view of who you are and what you want is very helpful. And for us in this particular case, in Nordson's case, we clearly knew growth is the best opportunity for the company. It's a strong company. We want to make it stronger. How do we do this, right? So that was the clarity of purpose, I guess, is probably important, right? Because then it allows you to make good choices, right? It allows you to say, I want to do this or I don't want to do that, right? Mm-hmm. If it aligns with my what my purpose and what I care about, then it is easy to make that decision. The second thing I've always shared, I would tell you, is that be curious, right? Be curious. You're always learning. Doesn't matter it's a challenging environment or a simple a new experience, meeting new people. I think being curious helps. One other thing I would share with you would be taking risk, right? In changing environments, we needed to take some risk. We needed to keep our plants open, because we had customers who were making face masks and hospital gowns. We just didn't have a choice to simply say, well, I'm going to ship that. It's just not an option.
Right.
So we needed to keep things open. And so we knew we were taking some risks. So, we were reading up everything, our teams are reading up on what the CDC guidelines are. And all of us know those kept moving, kept changing, right? So you need to take some risk. And, finally, I will tell you, just focus on what you're really good at. Right? I mean, we knew what we were good at. We wanted to be the best we can be in whatever the circumstances were. So that's kind of a couple of things I would share with you.
Great. Be passionate about and then focus on what you're passionate about. Maintain a clarity of purpose and ensure that you're aligning with your own sense of purpose. Be curious. I love this phrase of be curious beyond the obvious. So, things that are right in front of you, it's always important to understand the why or how. That's great. Taking risks, clearly in the current environment, which is, it's pretty dynamic. That is a very, very important advice as it marries against your advice of taking advantage of opportunities, and then focus on what you're good at. So really build on your strengths, right? Yeah. We all have an opportunity, or we all have a habit of focusing on things we can improve on, which is a natural tendency. And we sometimes forget to really leverage our strengths to the best of their abilities, right? So yeah, that's great. Well, that's excellent. Any other leadership advice that you would offer to our audience who have the benefit of talking to you from your experience and your vantage point?
I would tell you, all opportunities I've had, a good fortune comes because there's certainly incredible amount of luck, and certainly a family that gave me the opportunity to either go to school or pursue the career and be there to help me and support me on that. So appreciating family and friends, I would say, is probably big on my list. Clearly, and this is something many of you who know me share this. Share, right? Give back. We have had so much given to us. I fundamentally believe that you have an opportunity to help anybody along the way, because I'm 100%, at least in my case, I can tell you there were many that helped me along when I asked and when I didn't ask. And so I would say, all of us are blessed in so many ways, and especially this is a very trying, very dire time in India, so as all of you know. I think anything we can all do personally, whatever way we can help, really encourage you to do that, because I think, I mean, you've seen the pictures. You personally probably have stories and family still back home that is going through some incredible times. You know, it's just a humanitarian disaster in many ways. So I'd encourage you to keep them in your prayers, help them any way you can. I think the IACS organization, recommends, or is supporting 3 of them that they wanted me to share with you. Give India, Seva International, and India Development Relief Fund were 3 organizations IACS is supporting. And I'm sure you have many others that you find them to be worthy causes to help. But I really call out to all of you. And at this time of need for our friends and family in India, we should do everything we can.
Thank you, Naga. Thank you very much for a really great discussion on how resilience is becoming key to the new normal. And as leaders, how resilience is, it's table stakes as leaders, but it is also our opportunity to help lead other members and teach them resilience, modeling through our own actions, right? So really appreciate your thoughts around it. At this point, I think we can answer questions that have come up, and we're starting to see some of these questions come up. So the first thing that I see here, Naga, is how do you balance between supporting your teams at the same time as continuing to perform and make progress as an organization and as a leader during these challenging times?
Yeah. And I think, I'd go back to finding the right balance, right? So there are short-term things that none of us can, have to do, right? So you have to find a way to do. But, we are like a year into this, right? And you can begin to see, first 3 months, everybody just did what they needed to do, right? But when you go a year into this is starting to fatigue. I'm talking about in North American context, obviously. In India, things are reverting back. But, thankfully, in some parts of the world, like China and others, things are normal almost. So just remembering that pacing is so important, right? So in our case, we have our new strategy, we're rolling it out. What we had to pare back was to say, here are 2 parts of our strategy. It's really important that we need to keep going on. And here is 3 others we're gonna pull back, right? We're going to start working on them the following year.
Yeah.
So we've had to make choices,
That's right.
mainly pacing, because you can't have people burn out on you.
That's right. That's right.
And we've had to try a couple of things. So I'll give you some small tricks. Some of my team members, I can't take credit for this, some of my team members have come up with this. So we have a monthly leadership meeting, like all of you have. So we dedicate 1 hour, half hour to 1 hour, to just doing something fun. And it's got nothing to do with the agenda at hand. So one of our leaders, the last time around, sent out a note ahead of the meeting and asked us to select our 3 favorite emojis. So everybody selected 3 emojis, sent them in. And so based on the emoji, we needed to guess who the person was. So it was a fun exercise for about an hour. So you just have to find ways to sort of recognize that there is a lot of fatigue. And how do you release some of that? But you still have work to do. So it is just that, can you pace some things? So those are some things we're working on.
No, that's a great point, Naga, and that links to one of the questions that I just read here is, how are you thinking about your talent strategy in a post-COVID workplace, right? And that links to protecting and nurturing the talent that we've had, or that you've had, and then acquiring new talent as well. So maybe add a little color around that.
Yeah, it is, talent development, right? And everybody knows that is probably the single biggest agenda on all our plates today, because be it recruiting people today, it's impossible, right? And people have a lot of choices. So why would they want to come to work for you?
That's right.
You got to have a compelling story about who you are and where you're going and what the person will be benefiting from it. But for us, it is really important to think about what is Nordson's value proposition. Why Nordson, right? So that's one. The second is, we're a traditional manufacturing industrial company. We have to adjust, right? If you asked any of our leaders only a year ago and said, I want to work from home, and they would kind of look at you cross-eyed, right? But these days, that's going to become the norm, right? It may not, what I worry about, and I don't believe will be, at least Nordson is not going to become a 100% virtual company. We're just not that, right? We make stuff and we have to have people working together to make stuff. So,
right.
But would we have to have a hybrid business, hybrid work from home? That is a big argument that our teams are making. We don't have an answer to it, but that's something that the teams are working on. So that'll be an example of, and you have to pay attention to people, right? So we have more touch points with our key leaders than we ever have had. And you have to, because people have so many different issues within personally or professionally. I think being in touch with people is very essential. We talked a little bit about communication. We're spending a lot more time around formal communication as well as informal.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Naga, for sharing that. So this is another interesting question. Such a broad topic, and there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
So when we have to make quick decisions and pivot in a short period of time, a la last year and continuing on, there's sometimes a possibility to fall for the initial feedback, which could just be noise and not a consistent feedback over an acceptable period of time, right?
Yeah.
We all have a little bit of engineer in us, right? So we would want to have some of that, multiple data points. How do you overcome such a challenge when making decisions based on that?
You have to remember the situation you're in, right?
Yeah.
Think about it as ship going down. You're a captain. You don't have a choice to analyze. Ship is going down.
That's right.
Figure it out, right? So oftentimes that's what I would tell you is that, and many a times, or at least sometimes, there are thought processes where people don't want to make a decision because they're afraid of making a mistake.
Yeah.
In crises, you just don't have an opportunity. You just have to trust that you have so much more capability, and you're far more smarter than you give yourself credit for. So just, if you take the slogan of Nike, just do it. And let's say it is wrong. Well, you can pull back, right? So I think I've always believed in the fact that you got to do something.
Right.
You cannot just stand with your feet planted in concrete. You just can't. In crisis and in these kinds of environments, would you react to noise? Maybe you did. That's okay, right? Sometimes an organization needs you to react to a noise because they want to see what you're made of. Are you empathetic? Are you listening? Are you tone deaf? Right? I mean, it can happen. So I think you shouldn't. At least my recommendation would be: don't worry about getting it wrong, or don't worry about reacting to a noise because you have a crisis. Nobody expects you to know everything because if you did, you wouldn't be here.
That's right.
So that, other ideas what I normally do is, if you feel like you are very analytical and you have difficulty making decisions fast, well, get somebody else who does that well on your team.
That's right. That's right.
Right? I mean, that's the other way, is the workaround is, and have the good sense of listening.
That's right. That's the important
part.
Yes.
Right? Because you bring a team member on who has a different strength than yours, that's a good reason to do that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you have to listen to them and you have to trust their strengths. So.
Yeah, no, it's great point. A question is, besides learning from past experiences about resilience, do you employ any external strategies, or would you recommend any go-to areas or solutions to cope with pressure? So pressure is clearly a key impact on all of us, right?
Yeah, I think, just for all of us, it's very different. For me, it's different. What I will tell you is take time for yourself, is what I've always done, is to make sure, in my case, I have to exercise regularly, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for me, good thing for my family as well, because I'm not that grumpy, right? So I would, take time for yourself, whatever that be, right? So, I have not, not been a big advocate of big external resources, and so we explored some of those. End of the day, we felt like that was going to be more work on top of all the things we have to do. So we said, you know what? Fine, I'll read this article, but I'm not going to put my leadership team through 50 hours of this,
Yep.
But I'm not suggesting that that is not for everybody. For some team members and some organization that works. For us, it was more about, let's just make sure, we started having rules around don't call anybody on a weekend, right? Some team members started meetings only at 9:00 in the morning, or they didn't have meetings on Friday. So each of them have tried different things. I encourage a lot of innovation and trial and error. People should try whatever that makes sense. But big for me would be take time for yourself. Find the right balance between what is at work, right? I mean, all of us are working from home. Early days, you probably stayed glued to the screen without knowing how many hours you've been there, right?
Right.
And I think after 6 months, we probably said, "Oh my God, I can't keep doing this," right?
That's
so
right.
Finding the right, all of those, it just goes back to the fact that try to find some balance, and do things that you enjoy a little bit, because this is going to, I love to tell you that this is over and we'll all be back to normal, and I hope it surely will happen soon. But till then, we have to figure a good balanced life is important. So.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, because investing in ourselves as leaders, we are the biggest asset that we have, right? So from that perspective, investing in that asset is absolutely the great advice. So thank you for sharing that. The earlier question that I somehow missed is, what is one failure that you have learned from that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, no, I think, and I thought about this one and what I wanted to share, because there will be many to share. Let's pick one. But what I will tell you is, I know, Anshu, you and I worked in the same business, not at the same time, but the same business. This was back, a number of years ago, when I was part of that business at ITW. Had a mass tort litigation, right? Incredible amount of litigation, and some form of it continues always. And I was, designated the corporate witness. Right? Okay, it is not an easy job, I can tell you that. Early days, I was not very good at it. I got myself in more trouble. I got my company more in trouble. And it was probably one of the most difficult things I've had to ever do in my life, my entire life. And I can take some punishment, but that one was tough. To have 8 hours of video deposition in front of a very aggressive, very combative plaintiff lawyer, and you will know how good a life you've got it. So I, it was not fun. And I would say I've had my share of, bad depositions that put things at stake, right? Things I cared about. And so there was a time when I had to reflect back and say, am I cut out for this? Should I even do this, right? Yeah. And you start with, some amount of frustration, right? Some amount of frustration, maybe some amount of, throw your hands up and, I want to leave. Did those thoughts come to my mind? Yes, they did. But somehow some good sense prevailed, and somebody gave me good encouragement to say, this is a leadership opportunity. Step up to the opportunity that this company needs you to. And I, lucky for me, I listened and I buckled down. I learned more about it. I came up with some tricks. We developed how-to manuals, FAQs, teams. I mean, you won't believe it, how much we had to put in, but we did all of that. And I'm glad we did, because in the end, we prevailed. I wouldn't say it's because of me, but I would say, at least I didn't derail it like I did the first time around. But it's a great lesson for me,
That's a great example, Naga. I'm sure all of us leaders have had different times in our career when when we've encountered those kind of challenges, and perseverance and making sure you get help and listen to help.
Yeah,
is great advice.
Yeah.
So another question coming in: how did you manage sales or closing deals in a virtual selling environment when it's always difficult if you're not interacting and engaging in a personal manner in a business negotiation?
Yeah, I personally, right, our teams do an incredible job. So I wouldn't take any credit for closing any deals. Most of them would say, don't have Naga at the meeting because we use the product, or may sign up for a discount, right? So the sales guy's best opportunity is never to invite a CEO to their sales call. Right? And Anshu's laughing, probably employs that every day.
I wasn't going to say anything. Thank you, Naga.
But I will tell you, our teams have been incredibly effective even in this virtual times. It is difficult, incredibly difficult, but I can tell you, our teams have found their way around. I think sticking and going back to the value proposition.
Yeah.
And, of course, your credibility helps a lot, right? So in our case, deep relationships where we've been for a customer there for a long period of time, that carries you some ways. And then helping a customer out in these difficult periods of time, no matter what, I think also wins you some credibility. So that's kind of how we've been able to do, is that really double down on service, double down on application support, right? So in our case, we sell capital equipment. Oftentimes the customer has an application and says, hey, can your system do this, at this speeds and this units per hour with this kind of quality or this type of resolution. Our teams have been able to pull it off. It's not been easy. I can definitely tell you. But the businesses are, coming back, as most of you have read in the papers and whatever businesses you follow. At least in the U.S., things are coming back very strongly. I think we're in a good way, headed in the right direction. So I'm not answering the question, but
no, I think you touched upon some really important points, and I would just add to what you said, Naga, that over the last year and a half, there has also been an acceptance from the customers to be able to engage in these kind of things, right? And to your point, the relationships that we as organizations have been able to build with them have really, that's the capital that we've been able to draw upon, right? And at the end of the day, if we're solving customers' problems, the means in which we engage in to solve their problems becomes less of
because a lot of them didn't even want to engage, right? So
correct.
In many cases, the customer said, don't come here, right?
That's right.
And in a lot of ways.
That's right.
So if you're cold calling with a Zoom, probably going to be incredibly difficult.
That's right. That's right. So. Yeah, absolutely. Well, any last words, Naga, before we close out here? We've got a few minutes.
Yeah, no, just one thing I would tell you, it is, as I think about this period of time, and all of us have been through some difficult times this year, and spending time, at least for me personally, spending time with family has been a blessing and a boon, and goes back to reinforce what I've always believed in, is finding that right balance. For each of us, it's very different. For me, it has been wonderful to have spent more time with my son and be at home more because I didn't travel, which has been fantastic. So remembering that as we go, eventually we'll get to a normal place. Just remembering the lessons we learned in COVID when we spend more time with our families. I think keeping a modicum of that still intact. I plan to keep it that way because that's going to be helpful. Last thing I would say is I certainly want to thank Srinivas and IACS leadership team. Thank them for everything they do. This is just an incredible group of volunteers who do. I can't even imagine all the things they pull together. And Anshu, for you, as you joined ITW, I'm so proud that you took up the challenge to join us, join Srinivas and the team, and help us. And organizations like this are intended to help each other, and I'm glad all of you are pitching in. So.
Thank you, Naga, for your kind words. I'll double down on your request. The three organizations that IACS supports is Give India, Seva International, and India Development Relief Fund. But if possible, please consider helping either these organizations or any other organization that you're familiar with or you feel comfortable with in this in these hard times. We are really it is up to us, to Naga's earlier point, to share and give back to folks that are struggling. So really appreciate your help in that. We'd like to thank our corporate sponsors, ITW, Dover Corporation, USG Corporation, Nordson, Sonoco, and ChampionX, and our supported corporations, which are McKinsey, Voya Financials, Verizon Media, Conagra, Essilor USA, Aflac, and Global Logic. Really wonderful having a conversation with you, Naga. There were some really great words of advice and experiences that you've shared. Resilience is the key to new normal, and as you said, we really need to reach down deep within ourselves to continue to maintain a balance between our personal life and professional life as we build our resilience. So on behalf of IACS, I thank you very much for your time. And thank you, Srinivas, for the opportunity to have this wonderful discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Anshu. It has been great and good to see you again.
Yeah, same here.
All right, take care, everybody.